Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this brand new episode of Building Benny's Movie Park in Planet Coaster. Bit of a different intro today because I didn't record the first part with my face on it. So instead we'll begin with a speed build segment. This is not going to be a regular thing, it just kind of worked for this episode. It's only the first few minutes, after that it's back to a regular video. Obviously we're going to be working on the Back to the Future area today, so let's get straight to it. Starting with the Courthouse Mall entrance building, of course, and per usual, using various different elements that are not meant to be used this way, I tried putting in all the accurate details for this building, including some windows, the frames of which were a bit tricky. I really wanted this to look exactly like the ones in a movie, so it's not super extravagant, it's kind of basic, but it works. And a similar thing goes for the ridges at the very top. There's just a few extra edges, I suppose, and it's not much else. Usually I might go for a bit more extravagant detailed buildings, but since this has to be accurate, I'm sticking with what I'm seeing. I mean, luckily it's nothing too crazy, it's not that much work either, so that's really nice for a change. The biggest and most recognizable parts are of course the pillars, which I put in place using some of these plaster kind of pole elements. It's nothing crazy. Again, I'm using some of these really fancy top and bottom pieces to finish those off, and then of course copying them over to have 4 of them in a row. The thickness is a bit of a stinker. It's not exactly the same, I think, but it looks close enough, and that's really what this is all about. Then behind those pillars are the glass windows. This is also not ideal to do because you're gonna see the borders of these glass panels, which is not great, but it's all we can do for now, really. And before continuing with that, I first popped in a roof using the same dark panels I used for another building in this area, or going to use for another building in this area, because I don't know, I just like black roofs. It looks a bit more industrial, a bit more realistic somehow. And of course later that also includes some of these rooftop vents and ducts, that sort of thing. But before working on that, I first thought let's pop in the Hill Valley Mall kind of text on the building, which instantly makes it look a lot cooler and a lot more accurate. I love those details. Even the font I picked is pretty similar to the actual thing, so that is a good thing. The final big thing for this building would of course be the shape on top, the triangular kind of roof. Which we luckily had some pieces for. I'm really happy with that. Along with, of course, the clock at the very center, which up until now I didn't know actually works. So that's a fun detail as well. And then the lion statues, I used cats for mine, which are really similar. Those are also from the sorcery pack, I believe. And that is just perfect. It looks pretty accurate, so I'm happy with that. The front of the building also needed some extra details that are accurate to the movie, which thankfully nothing too crazy. Again, this whole building is quite a breath of fresh air, to be honest. It's nothing really so difficult or complicated. You can see me add some ducts on the roof for some realism, some theme park realism at least. I'm not sure if this is how they're supposed to look, but it's fine for now, I guess. It looks decent. And then I moved on to the really interesting looking frames on the glass. I used very thin poles for it to kind of get that in place. And honestly, it turned out pretty good. I think it's actually quite accurate, and it didn't even take that long. The only thing is not all the poles are the exact same thickness, because you can't really increase or decrease the length of them like you can in Theme Park Tycoon 2, but still, it looks really quite nice, quite accurate, so I'm super happy with how that turned out, and it really makes it just look more detailed, like that extra bit of detail you otherwise kind of miss. It's a very basic building, like I keep saying, but this really helped to make it look at least a little bit more interesting. And all that said, I think that is pretty much it for this building. Let's move on with the rest of this area. Okay, so here we are. This is the Hill Valley Courthouse Mall, the exterior at least. Of course, the inside still needs a ton of work, but for now this will do just fine. I suggest we first do all the big elements, and one of those is of course the lake, the little puddle thing. So let's go and decorate this right now. First of all, we need my favorite thing, some rocks. And these have to be a very specific bright light color. Let's have a look. I'm thinking grayish, maybe a slight hint of brown in there. Something like this, I think. think should be decent. And all we have to do is simply add some of these rocks on the sides. They're all relatively small rocks this time around, so unfortunately that will take a second, but I do think it'll look really quite nice. And of course, accurate, most of all. There do seem to be a few bigger ones, so let's first pop those in place actually, so we can kind of build around them. For example, one of them over here, just like that. In the meantime, let me just take a sip of my cappuccino. Also, let me just pop a few of these rocks over here so I don't need to keep grabbing them from the browser. And that way I can have a few different sizes as well without having to do that manually every single time. And then maybe on the end here we can put a slightly bigger one for some variety. Of course, I have to make sure not the whole thing looks identical in terms of size. That's a bit boring. Here you go, just something like that. And then you're just gonna fill up the gaps with the smaller ones. Here you go. Let me just get this done and be right back with you.
A few moments later.
Something like this. Then I did notice over here on the edge, there are some kind of regular stone type things, like rectangular brick-shaped bricks. Let's go ahead and see if we can maybe use these pieces over here. Okay, so I can already tell it's not going to be super accurate, but I think it'll be good enough. It's the idea that counts, ladies and gentlemen. And we tried. That is for sure. And I think that is pretty much it. Besides maybe some of this texturing on the edges to make it blend in slightly better here, and then some pebbles and sand on top. Then we need a shit ton of bushes. Once again, let me first just put down the ones we can possibly use, because this time we have a bunch of different ones, like a lot of different ones. This one we definitely need at the front here, that's for sure. I think we'll also need these later, so let me just pop those in. Here, I think all of these will do. Then let's begin, well, right over here. I've already noticed this one looks pretty accurate for the bush in the front. Let's just go and put 2 of those already. And I'm noticing now we may actually first want to do the surrounding edges and stuff. For example, there is a curb on the edges, it appears. And I just found this curved part, which I think will fit just perfectly on the edge. Perfectly might be a big word, but it's good enough. And then here we can simply continue with the curb. Do of course have to make sure the path aligns perfectly with that shape. So just like this. Oh, beautiful. We also have some paths on the side, and this just happens to perfectly fit that curve. Oh, don't you just freaking love that? Anyway, we just go all the way to the end, I think. We also need a path on the opposite side, a bit thinner, however, this time. Let's complete that. Okay, I think this is a bit better. Now we can actually start with all the plants. Of course, this will never be 100% accurate. It's more just the vibe we're going for. Pretty sure I've been saying that for a long time now, but you know, it's important to know. So just like this, I'll spread around some of these bushes. Maybe some flowers in there as well. Also, let's put the water back in. Here you go. So yes, then right now, let's just go ahead and add all sorts of plants. We also need, of course, the tiny little bridge that goes from here to here. Before doing that, first some plants here. Surprisingly, there's also a few more tropical looking plants in there. I don't know why, but let's just do it because it has to be done. For example, one of these maybe? Bit smaller, and all the tiny little gaps can be filled up using the tiny little ferns. That has worked very, very well in the past, so let's just keep trying that. Here, this is definitely... Ooh, I like that. Also fun to add is a tiny little walkway that goes over here, because in some reference images we do have it with a few of these stepstone kind of things. I'm not sure how accurate some of these images are, but I guess we'll just pop it in because it does seem like a fun little detail. So just like this, I'll pop in a few steps. And then this is starting to look really nice. I quite like that, yeah. The only thing is, can we add path to this, or is that going to be a bit weird? It will definitely require some editing to make it work, but I think we can do it so that at least we as players can walk over it. And then we'll just put like a bit of a path over here so you can walk on part of this little island. And then we just make that invisible like this. If we go here, we can simply... There you go. Walk over it. Before doing more bushes here, we need the giant tree, of course. Now, to me, that kind of looks like a willow, but I'm not sure if the willow in this game looks nice. Look, there's a weeping willow. It is, it's not exactly the same thing. We do have different sizes, of course, but that is just really sad. Let's see what other ones we have that maybe look similar. This is definitely not it. Neither is that. We also don't need any pine trees. We'll just browse through all of these bad boys here. Look, this is already getting closer. It's just a bit too small. That is, way too high. Look, this kind of thing, except not red. Okay, getting close. European ash tree. The leaves probably aren't gonna be identical to the real thing, but I don't think it matters. You know what? I think just a regular oak tree looks the nicest, even though it's not. Is that it? There's a few different sizes. Maybe this one looks a bit cooler. Even though the original one isn't an oak tree, I think this just looks the best. Just on the side here, maybe that is still a bit too big. Here's the thing. These leaves look the closest, except the stem, like the trunk, is very, very skinny, and I don't like that. So I think this will do just fine. It looks really cool. It spices that up a big amount. So let's start with that. Then let me just go ahead and add some more bushes around it and be done with it.
A few.
Boom. That is the left. Then now let's do the right, where I think we need a few of these things, which I really like the look of, to be fair. I don't know why. It's different. And that reminds me, we also need some stepstones here. Almost forgot, but we definitely see that in the movie. So first I'll use some of these, and then some of these other rocks also have flat surfaces. So let's kind of mix them along with a few smaller ones underwater to kind of fade it out into the water, if that makes sense. That does look nice. Wow, I like that. Anyway, I was working on these, so let's continue with that, along with, of course, some more bushes. What a surprise. This is different. It's nature, but it's very much controlled nature. And I don't think I've really done this before, but I don't mind. It's different. That I think is pretty much it. Then let's get rid of all this bullshit. Okay, that actually took quite a while, but it does look nice. We only still need the bridge. So, well, let's just go ahead and be done with it. I do think we may be able to use this part for something it's at least more intended for. Let's make this a subtle wooden color. Look, just over here. Something like this at least. Maybe a little bit more towards that side. And then we simply have to put something on it to make it actually function as a bridge. How about how about this? Obviously, I haven't used this enough. Actually, I don't think that's gonna work. Unless maybe we put it on its side like this and kind of just fill all of that up. Same thing on the other side. Here you go. I've also noticed in some of these images there are benches here, or at least a bench, so let's pop that on. And all the bridge still needs are a bunch of supports to hold it up, and then we are done. I keep saying that. I hope this time we actually are. Just something like this. Looks pretty cute, actually. Then let's have a look. Is that it? I think that is it. Besides, of course, some lampposts and stuff like that, but that's a problem for later. First of all, yes, quite a lot of progress already in this area. To be fair, this is a big chunk of the area. Let's be real. However, I think it's a good idea to see where the queue for the coaster is going to be. I do think this could still be the entrance. That seems fun. So you go in here somewhere to the right, maybe underneath the track or something, and you end up at the station. That could work, right? I suppose let's just try it and see what happens.
6.5.
First, however, I created this, because as you can see in the movie, at some point there is a little subway station kind of entrance thing, and I thought this could actually serve as the exit of the ride, where you just go out and then underground you end up back here. Seems nice. First off, we need some buildings over here, and I'm thinking this building from the movie. The big pillars are the most recognizable feature of this building, so let's go ahead and see where those have to start and end. Should be about as high as the main building. This seems fine. At the very top, we need the roof with that same blue color. It goes until, well, basically the whole width, and then pretty deep. Hard to tell exactly how deep, but for now, let's stick with this. And that has to be very thick. We can just do it like this. That is really, really fast, actually. I can already tell there's a subtle trim at the very top, so let's pop that in place already. Also, these have to stick out at the very top a little bit. We need walls too, which I think is pretty important. Let's put those in here. It's a bit deeper than the actual thing, but that's because the coaster has to go through. And I think it's more about the idea anyway. Actually, wait, no, this has to be brick. The proportions are all the way off. It's actually frustrating. It's all because of the coaster. Truly. Well, let's first create those weird box looking things. It's so great. We can just flip these pieces around now. Actually, such a huge game changer. Look at this. You wouldn't say so, but it's incredible. Okay, so that looks about like that. close enough. We then once again need some giant glass panes. This right here isn't going to be super accurate, but it's the thought that counts. I will add some of these support beams. I just found out that 2 glass panels overlaid creates a sort of glitch, which is not great. So let's not do that. I suppose we'll just use something that looks like it. Here you go. Same thing up here then. Then we simply shove this inside, and that should actually be pretty much it then. Probably till about here. And we copy it over one more time for the other side. And then this is going to be the outer wall. That definitely needs some work. What is going on? This makes no sense. At least the train still fits underneath. That is a good thing. I don't know, guys. Let me just first finish the base structure, the main shapes, the proportions, and then continue from there, because this is really tedious. I'll be right back with you. This should be the some sort of outline of this building. Most importantly, of course, so we can put the queue inside, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. I just realized to do that, to make the queue, we also need the building that's going to be over here. But let's only do the exterior, the outside walls. This time I'll use brick wall painted for a change. This should extend, I think, all the way there. It's going to be a bit of an eyesore though from here. I think we can change that. We can fix it later. Maybe by turning the front wall into a pirate style building, but we're going to have to see that later. For now, let's just pop... Isn't that a bit too big? That's a bit too big. Let's go with this instead. I believe that has to be, again, about the same height as the other buildings. Here you go. And I won't do anything to that. It's now just for the queue, which we have to put somewhere here. However, first, I wanted to split this part of the path, coming from the station, of course, connect that to this, so that if you want to go to the Back to the Future area, you don't need to walk all the way around to get there. Only thing is, can we do that? Maybe from here instead? It's too steep. That's too bad. Okay, so that's not gonna work. Instead, we should probably make an entrance here then. How exactly, I'm not sure. I guess just a regular path of about 6 wide, starting here, and then with a bit of a curve, go through in between the buildings. And we're gonna have to sort of... The water has to go, actually, this, doesn't it? Like, why is this even here? So unnecessary. Wow, that's so unnecessary. Hold on. Let's just make the whole thing flat, because we really don't need water there. Really, really don't. So, here you go. And now we can make this look a lot... Look, why did I do that? See, and now I'm doing this again. I'm supposed to work on the Back to the Future. Okay. What... I'm getting so tired of myself. Well, I guess we're doing this now. I just really don't know how I'm gonna make this look nice. The transition from area to area, that is. So this looks better. To be fair, I do think it's a good thing, this layout, because now you can just walk around this big section in the middle, which seems nice. But making this look nice is gonna be quite some work. That's work for another day. Really, right now, we have better things to do. This is great and all, but where's the queue supposed to go now? Because it starts here. Needs to go here. Oh my god. Let's just start here inside where it actually should start, and then go down, because we should probably go underneath that path. That's the only way, I think. Underground, we're gonna go up until there. Then here we need to go back up. I think this can work, actually. Then in here, we're gonna go straight in this corridor. Oh, that's perfect. And then inside of this building is where there's gonna be like kettle pens, maybe, just like this. Zigzag, our favorite queue type. Then we're gonna go 1 story higher, and maybe like right up until here. Not sure where you're gonna end up in that case. Oh my god. Okay, then here, this is where you're gonna go down. Yes, this can work. Now we just need to go and swap out the entrance and exit. So the entrance now has to be here. And then we simply connect the queue to the entrance. And I think that could just work really well. Let me just paint some railings on here so you can actually see what's going on. So over here you get in, there's a bunch of kettle pens, not too many, but just a few. Then you go up, all around again, even further up, and you end up at the entrance. I think this actually has potential. We just need to break open a few walls here. And then we of course have the same issue, but with the exit. That needs to go from here, underground, to here. Let's have a look. We'll do probably just straight down here. So many stairs in this park. It's actually ridiculous. Not very wheelchair accessible, I'm afraid. And then let's see if we can simply do this. It appears that works just fine. Yeah, wow, in a straight line. That's crazy. Okay, this path isn't looking all that great, but we'll fix that later, of course. And I believe we can go ahead and open this up. So people are finally gonna go to this area. Let's speed this up and see if that actually happens. Wait for it. People are already flocking towards the brand new ride. Obviously we need a bunch more stalls in all these buildings, but I do think this is already a great start. Whoa! Oh my god. Oh my... Yo, holy shit. Okay, I guess people like it. I also put some barriers on the sides here, so people now only go straight through this entrance hole instead of the glass. And I didn't actually know that worked, but I guess it does. This is really useful for the future as well. Oh, and by the way, I also put some trees here, one on this side and one on the other, just like the examples. And that reminds me, we also need 2 tiny little plants on the front, and that in fact has to be this. Oh wow, that exact one. That is literally what we need. I personally hate the way these things look, but it's accurate to the movie, so we gotta do underneath. Let's put a very simple pot, and then the exact same thing on the other side. Perfect. So now I think that is pretty much it. Look, there's people inside now. Isn't that nice? Yeah, that's sweet. How full is the queue already? Oh my god. What? No. Dude, what the hell? The queue is... Oh, it's been open for 5 seconds. The queue is already almost full. That is crazy and potentially a problem. I mean, we can make an extended queue underground at this point right here, but I guess we'll have to see what happens in the future, because that is a lot of work I do not feel like doing right now. Now, before signing off today, let's actually put the water back in. There's one more thing I'd like to show you that I did. I added some rocking boat effects. As you can see, this boat is now very slowly rocking beneath the waves. Whatever. And I did that using the brand new rotational platform thing. And as you can see, I did that to all of them. The small ones go a bit faster, and it looks so nice. Like, immediately, that just came alive. I even did a very, very slow one to the big ship here, and as you can tell, just that tiny detail changes so much. Immediately, it just comes alive. All these boats have it, so I really love that detail. Someone in the comments actually reminded me that that's possible, so big thanks. But this is... I love it. Like, oh, it looks so nice. I also did some of these extra supports off screen. For example, most of all, this one was completely non-existent. I fixed all the supports that were just basically non-existent, yeah. And there were a bunch of them. For example, this entire section was completely unsupported. And you can just tell it now looks much nicer. I thought maybe I should replace these, but I kind of like the way they look. I mean, I wouldn't know how else to do them. They'd probably look worse if I did them myself. So I quite like those, but yes, that's some updates on the pirate area. However, for today, I think that is pretty much it. Actually, quite some progress here. I did not expect that. Yes, if you have suggestions, of course, let me know down below in the comments. And then for today, that is it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell not to miss a single future video. And then I hope I'll see you in the next one.